Welcome back to Sharks Happen. My name is Hal. I'm your host, going over shark attacks from the 1900s till present, mostly large sharks. I'm going to get started over at Mala Smokova Cove. That's in Croatia. The date is October 6, 2008. Damjan Pecek, he is 46 years old. He and some friends are out in the morning. They are doing some spearfishing, and they're very close to shore. It just says that it's in the morning. They're in 10 meters from shore, so they're about 35 feet from shore. Damon has just gone ahead and speared a greater amberjack, and he put it on his stringer attached to his waist. And the fish was still bleeding and on his stringer when he was bitten in the left calf. So the fish must have been down by his leg, because he says it was probably going for the fish and it grabbed his leg. So now the shark has him by the leg, and he is beating on the shark's nose and grabs it by the gills. So it's a 10-foot great white, and he grabs the gills with his one hand, and he's beating the shark with the other hand in the head. And the shark lets go and goes away. His friends get him in. He ended up with a severe bite to his calf, but it doesn't seem to have done any major damage to arteries, or I don't see any nerve damage. So hopefully he was sewn up, and we're going to put this down as an attack, not an attempt to predate. Okay, now we're going to head over to Normanville, which is in South Australia. The date, October 22nd, 2017. Sarah Williams is 15 years old, and her family are out, and they're squidding. They're fishing for squid. She's in a kayak paddling next to her family in the afternoon when she is struck from the bottom by a great white, which throws her up in the air and down into the water. Her brother gets over with his kayak and pulls her up out of the water as the great white, about as long as her kayak, which was 15 feet long, kept circling the kayak. So it wasn't circling her, it was circling the kayak, and most of the time they hit these boats and kayaks, they're not interested in the people that are in them. Tamara McAllister and her boyfriend were one of the only ones. I've heard of another one I've come across, but it's very rare I come across a kayak attack where a shark actually bites the person. So that's an attack on Sarah Williams on her kayak. Territorial, which I think they're doing to boards. That's an attack, no injury, no attempt to predate. We're going to head over off of the coast of California to Humboldt Bay. The date, November 11th, 2004. Brian Kang is 38 years old, and he is out with two friends, a male and a female. They're doing some afternoon surfing. They've been in the water about 15 minutes, about 12:30. They probably went in somewhere around there. And they're taking the waves. They were able to catch a few waves, but the water is transitioning because high tide was at 10 o'clock. It's now almost 1 o'clock. And I guess the water's probably going up where they're at or down where they're at, and it's getting waves out further. Brian looks out to sea, and he sees past the sandbar in the distance that there's waves forming there. So he by himself makes the paddle 50 to 100 yards out, just past those breakers, past the sandbar. He's sitting in 6 to 8 feet of water at 1 o'clock, and he's hit from the side. He's grabbed, the shark, it seems, grabbed him by his side and clamped him to his board. He said he looked to the side. That was the first time he saw the shark. He was able to see about 8 feet of the hump of the back of the shark, and he could see the tail slapping the water, but he couldn't see the dorsal fin, which his friends ended up seeing, and they said it looked like it was about 3 feet high, which would be about the biggest dorsal fin I've ever seen from a great white. So the one that was cut off, I had shown pictures of it before. I put in the community board all the pictures of all the sharks, largest sharks that were caught around the world, and one of those was just the head and the dorsal because it was too heavy for them to bring back. So, he wasn't able to see the dorsal. Shark lets him go pretty quickly, and that's the second time that he saw the shark. Now he's laying in the water, so when the shark let him go, it sounds like he fell off his board on the opposite side of where the shark was. But he's right by the shark's head, and they're kind of laying in the water next to each other, and he takes his board with his left arm and puts the board up against the shark and starts pushing to create distance between him and the shark. And when he gets it all the way out, he takes his right hand and does the same. So he must have been able to just get as much distance as he could. Then he grabbed onto his leash, pulled the board to him, got on it, and then he said he felt a freakish swirl of turbulence underneath him. A lot of these surfers have the shark go underneath their board afterwards, sometimes checking them out as they're going under there. And it sounds like that's what happened there, and he says he could not hot-foot it to the beach fast enough. He says sure enough, when he gets part way in, the seas go totally calm, totally dead flat. And now he's screwed, he said. He had to paddle his way the rest of the way in. He ended up with a bite to his left flank, so his left side, probably involving the hip and the side. And then he had a wound to his leg, and it sounds like defensive to his right thumb or his right hand. None of them critical wounds. They were able to sew him up. I didn't even see anything about arteries or nerve damage. So hopefully Brian got out of that one okay. We're putting it down as an attack, not an attempt to predate. Okay, now we're going to head over to Boa Viagem Beach, which is in Recife, Brazil. The date, July 22nd, 2013. Brunna Gobbi is 18 years old, and her and her friend are in the water. They're doing some swimming, and they get caught up by a rip current that takes them about 50 yards from the shore. They're out there, and they're having trouble swimming back in, and the reports are that Brunna drowned before anything had ever happened. I can't tell by the video whether that's true or not. The shark probably has her under the water. I don't see her at the top of the water, so it's possible she had already drowned. But her friend didn't drown, and I didn't see her friend by her when she was attacked by the shark at all. So you'll see the video. I'll put a link to this in the description. This starts out with the fire department there warning the family that they're in a dangerous area. They shouldn't be in the water. They ignore the firefighters. So the firefighters keep an eye on them, which I was wondering how all this ended up going on so quickly as far as the rescue. They're warned prior that they shouldn't be in the water. It's a dangerous part of the water, and they ignore them. They're in the water. They get dragged out. At about 20 after 1, there's a rescue, and you can see in the video the rescue boat is almost to the people that are in the water swimming towards shore. You cannot see Brunna because she's probably already under the water, but you can see the fin of the shark. And then you see it thrashing around, and then seconds later you can see a blood patch kind of hit the surface. You don't really see Brunna until they were 50 yards from her at the most when the shark bit her. And you can see the jet ski come around, they grab onto Brunna and pull her up on the jet ski, and then it looks like they gather all the rest of the people that are out in the water. They're all hanging on there, and it seems like one person is like probably hanging from a rope far back from them, and it drags them all into the shore. And then the video goes on to show them bring Brunna onto shore. And it's a tough video to make out exactly what's going on, but it looks like she lost her left leg. I've seen that her legs were damaged, but it looks like that left leg wasn't there from about the knee down. Not a real graphic video. You can't see a lot. They blur out a lot, but what they blurred out makes me think that that leg was gone below the knee to begin with. They said that they amputated when they got into the hospital, and she ended up passing away after that. After surgery and hours in the hospital, she couldn't recover from her injuries, and they said this was a bull shark. You know, I don't know if they got a tooth or not. It doesn't say they did. You don't hear a lot about bull shark teeth being recovered. I wonder why that is. Mostly you hear about great whites. So that's our attack on Brunna. I'll put the link in the description for the video so that you can watch it yourself. Like I said, it's from a distance. You can see that something's going on. Nothing near what happened to Simon Nellis as far as being able to see the whole incident. So I'll put that down. We're going to put this down as an attack and not an attempt to predate. Okay, now we're going to finish off our unprovoked attacks over off the coast of California. We're going to Sand Dollar Beach. The date is May 9th, 2020. Ben Kelly, he and 7 other friends, they're out doing some surfing after 1 o'clock in the afternoon. They're within 100 yards from shore, and they're sitting on their boards. There was, I guess, visibility is poor, and a drone operator, Eric Maylander, had told the investigators that he had witnessed with his drones about 15 sharks in the water in that bay that morning, and during the week he saw large sharks up near the shoreline throughout the week, but none were acting aggressive. So Ben's out there, and he's with 7 other guys, and he's the one whose shark ends up knocking off the board. Bit him in the leg as it knocked him off the board, and it was a real quick one hit and done. Ben jumped right back on his board and got right into shore, and his friends took a leash off of one of their boards and made him a tourniquet, but he ended up passing away from loss of blood. Sounds like just the one bite to the leg. Probably got an artery, and they weren't able to staunch the bleeding effectively, and he passed away from the bite. What are you going to do? Sharks are going to not act like they're crazy unless they want to go ahead and attack somebody. I rarely see sharks do anything other than move around slowly unless they're eating. That's it. So what else do they think they're going to see from a drone most of the time with sharks? That's what you're going to see probably 999,000 times out of 100,000 times is that the shark's not going to do anything. These things are rare, so watching those drone footage, you're just watching a shark sitting there checking people out and going on its way. And when there aren't people there, you're just watching sharks just swimming around, probably not in a feeding event. That would be cool to see, though, if you could get, I've seen those drone footage of them eating those seals and sea lions, and it's cool to kind of watch that. But, I wouldn't be swimming there, surfing there, anything there where there's a bunch of sharks in the bay. That's just not for me. We're going to put this down as an attack, not an attempt to predate. They said it's between 10 and 14-foot great white. I would lean more towards 10 to 12, but, what are you going to do? Another one bite and done, but this one turned out to be fatal. We'll finish off our show with, you don't hear that every day. Before I get to this episode that's going to take place in Singapore, I wanted to bring up a couple things. I want to show you a couple of clips. I want to show you this clip of a surfer above you when you're right below him in the water. I have one, maybe two, but I'll show whatever I have of the surfer and what he looks like under the water. Pretty much looks the same as the picture that I have in my Great White book from 1991, my Great White Shark book that I refer to all the time about great white sharks. And, it's directly below the person, but it's the most, what do you say, I would say dishonest thing they've ever tried to push forth on sharks, because I'm going to show you now the clip that the shark sees as it's coming to get down close underneath it to where it sort of sees what they say that it sees. This is what they actually see. They're coming to get to the surfer. They're not underneath the surfer coming up. They're coming from the side to get to the surfer, and they can see that surfer's body on top of the board, a foot into the water at least. They're not looking at a board. They're not looking at something floating on the water. They're looking at something in the water. From the bottom, when they show us all these views from the bottom, yeah, oh, great. That even had me thinking that was possible. But now, like I said, that I've been covering all these things, no way. And it makes me wonder, did Baldrige believe in, sharks coming up underneath boards all the time, or did he think that they knew what they were coming to grab from the side, as I've come to do? Back before I started this show, I'm like all you guys. I read a lot about attacks back in the 70s and 80s, and my Great White Shark book is 1991. I've read all these things all that time. I stopped paying attention for like 20 years, and even all those books, you're not going to get enough attacks by specific sharks to be able to compare or be able to see patterns. So I came into this with the same Shark Week background, watching all those shows of what they told us we should think about these sharks. It's only recently, when I first started the show, I discovered bull sharks. I can see exactly what happened and how that myth came about. The hoaxes preceded the proof, and the proof was a professor that went to a river that saw sharks 10 miles up the river, a freshwater river, but the brackish water is pushed up 10 miles. So I know those bull sharks go up about 10 miles up that river, which is the San Juan, but they don't go leaping, they don't breach onto rocks and rapids and go into a lake. That's never happened. That's why 15 years after he made his stunning proof that nobody in Nicaragua could catch a shark there, they aren't there. So that changed. This is another one that changed, this board thing. Another thing that changed is I'm starting to think that if shark attacks are rare, and especially large shark attacks, and we're talking great whites and very large sharks, 10 feet and over, I'm starting to think none of those are mistaken identity, not one. I'm thinking these sharks check them out, whether it's a bull shark bumping you first or the great white in that murky water where they couldn't even see that there was a giant shark by them that bit their buddy in half. All they saw was blood over by their buddy. And then they saw the shark swimming away. They didn't even know it was in the area, but they thought they saw a dolphin first. That was that shark checking them out. We went over the surfboard thing with the buddies, and the guy came on, and that's the one that I covered where I said that it came at, and I don't think that they're getting underneath anymore. Their friends were looking over the guy's shoulder with crazy terror in their eyes, the surfer said, because they could see the shark coming. So it wasn't coming from underneath. It was coming from the side of them, just like I thought. So more and more of these that I see, I'm just going to call out the patterns. I used to know, dozens of attacks, and now we've gone through 270 right now that are in our files. So we probably went over 300 attacks. I have another probably 300 in my stacks that I go through and peruse, and I go through the list of overall attacks all the time, looking for things that interest me, even in looking into the smaller sharks. So my views on this are changing, and you should be able to see that with these great whites, at least if not in the show, in the comments, because people would start asking me, what would you rather be attacked by if it's the big three? And I started answering juvenile great white on a board. Yes, this one was fatal that we covered today, but most of them aren't, and almost all of them are one hit and done. Even Lewis Boren, sadly, was one hit and done. One that wasn't was Ben Linden, who stood up, kind of kneeled, and went to kick the shark, and the shark kind of bit him in half. That one didn't work out for him, and that shark wanted to consume him. But that was a large shark. That wasn't a 10 to 12 foot shark. That was the 14 foot plus. You get into a 14 foot plus, you are much more likely to be eaten than by any great white that's 10 to 12 feet. And when we talk about this mistaken identity thing, most of the time I'm talking great whites. Smaller sharks, even the babies, anything under 5 feet of a great white, a tiger or a bull, those things are like any other shark, and they probably do mistaken identity bites to arms and feet when they see them. But I'm not into this mistaken identity if it's not a small shark, and definitely not with a great white. So we're going to go over to the Sea View Swimming Club, which is over in Singapore. This is 1926, an unidentified woman. They had a platform, a dive platform. That sounds like a stage that she went on to. She got up on it, and she went to dive into the water, and she dove straight into the open mouth of a great white or a large shark. They don't say what size shark, but she definitely went inside the shark. It bit, didn't do any biting in half or trying to consume her, just bit her, and then it seems like it just let her go, kind of like David Miles, who swam into the mouth of that great white that first bit him in the neck and then took a second bite. By that time it was back to his lower back when it bit down. Probably bit her somewhere between the shoulders and the lower back. It doesn't say, but it says that she did get a femoral artery severed. She got to the beach, and there's a UK doctor on the beach, and he years later became some big famous surgeon over there, I guess, but he was the one that was on the beach, and he closed up the severed artery. He went ahead and he was able to close that up right there on the beach, but it was to no avail, as she still passed away from shock and blood loss. And I'd probably pass away from shock. That's what I think. That's why the David Miles thing just shocks me, is that he had so much composure being in the mouth of a shark, knowing you're in the mouth of a shark, and then being able to work out the details and figure out the best way to get out of the situation. Just incredible stories. This one sadly ends up in a fatality. 1926, we're going to put it down as an attack and not an attempt to predate. That's our show for today. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you join me in a few more days. But until then, if you go into that water, you are much more afraid of these sharks than they are of you.